Hey, my dad's retired now and works at the National Retirees Association. What? The National Retirees Association? Emery and Kara burst into laughter. There really are marriages for money, Kara exclaimed, patting Kevin on the shoulder. You were almost fooled. What? Am I being treated as a marriage scammer? I was so shocked. I couldn't find the words to respond. I'm Mary, 30 years old. Just an ordinary office worker. I met Kevin at the tennis club I attended, and after dating for 2 years, we've decided to get married. Kevin is 32, 2 years older than me. He works as a chef at a steakhouse run by his father, Thomas. Right now, I live with my mom and dad, but I plan to move out after we get married. Kevin also lives with his parents, but we've talked about renting a place together after the wedding. One day, Mom wants us to come to a family meeting, Kevin said. Ah, yeah. We were just talking about when to go, I replied. They're going to have this nice French restaurant deliver lunch boxes. Oh, really? I checked out the restaurant's website that Kevin mentioned. Wow, it looks like a fancy French place. Each dish looked absolutely beautiful. I was thrilled. The day of the family meeting in town arrived. I was nervous, but getting married, I'm about to climb that staircase. I hope I make a good impression on his parents. I was in the midst of happiness. But little did I know, this was about to turn into a complete downfall. When we arrived at the house, Kevin greeted me at the entrance. It was a big mansion. Sorry, just come in for now, he said, leading me to the living room. There, I met an elderly woman, probably Kevin's mother, Emery, and a young woman about Kevin's age, maybe his sister, Kara. Hello, I nervously greeted, but they didn't smile back. So, this is Mary? They looked at me up and down with a disdainful gaze. I was a bit shaken by the atmosphere. Well, she's passable, I guess, Emery said. Her hair isn't some wild color. Her bag looks neat. And she's dressed in a proper suit. Acceptable. Kara sneered. Huh? Confused, I looked at Kevin. Can you stop it, Mom and Kara? He said, frowning. Then looking at me. Sorry. Looks like my dad won't be here today, continues Kevin. What? Thomas isn't here for a family meeting? I was confused. I don't really understand the situation. Does he have business to take care of or something? I asked. No way. I didn't let you know? Then came the unexpected response from Emery. You thought it was just a family meeting with Kevin and you? Coming here for a family meeting means you're considering marriage, right? So, we decided to assess you beforehand to see if you're fit to become a part of this family. Yeah, your evaluation. Emery and Kara took turns speaking. An evaluation? Of me? I was speechless. Kevin continued. I thought it was just a family meeting. I had no doubts. And then this happens? But I tried to keep my composure. Well, yes. Eventually I'll need to talk with both of you, right? I put up my best guard. I was feeling the same as Kevin. But since we wouldn't be living with these two after marriage, I thought I could just get through this. Trying to keep up appearances, Kevin said we could open up the lunchbox. Inside, the dishes were as beautiful as expected, which cheered me up a bit. But then the mood was ruined by relentless questions from Emery and Kara. Mary works at corporation number 1, huh? Average, I guess. Safe choice. Each comment felt like an insult. Safe? Being called safe about my workplace by people I just met? I couldn't help feeling offended. Then, confused by the term safe, I'm saying it's passable. You're the one being evaluated, remember? Know your place. Kara said sharply, giving me a stern look. Place? Why am I being evaluated by Kara in the first place? Ignoring my feelings, another rude question came from Emery. What do your dad and mom do for work? Your mom is a housewife. Of course. Yes, she's a housewife. That's good. If she was a working mother, there might be a fear that you weren't raised properly or that your family is poor. What kind of judgment is that? This bizarre, discriminatory point of view kept going. At first, I thought I could just let it slide, but I started to feel less and less okay with their arbitrary evaluation criteria. But Emery didn't seem to notice and kept going. And your dad, is he still working? If so, tell us where he works, or if he's retired, the name of his former workplace. The way she asked was just terrible. Mom, you're interrogating her. Kevin finally intervened. But I answered honestly. I didn't see any reason not to. My father is retired now and works at the National Retirees Association. To my surprise, Emery and Kara burst out laughing. What? The National Retirees Association? The two burst into laughter. They laughed so hard they cried. I was taken aback by their over-the-top reaction. What's so funny about that? I was about to ask, but then, that's it. Marrying for money is real. After all, I'm glad we did this evaluation, Kara said, slapping Kevin on the shoulder. You were almost tricked. She's obviously after our wealth. They're so blatant about marrying for money. They laughed and clapped their hands, as if they had unmasked me. Kevin slammed the table. Enough, Mom and Kara, Kevin yelled. But I think my anger was even greater, as if I could cover it. Enough! I'm calling off the engagement, I said, grabbing my bag and standing up. What? You're angry now? Kara stopped laughing for a moment, then smirked again. It's like a criminal getting angry when caught. Then Emery clapped her hands in agreement. Such a shallow woman. Even her emotions are shallow. I didn't look back or respond to them anymore. I knew I would never see these two again. Excuse me, I said, leaving Kevin's house without looking back or stopping. Wait! Kevin chased after me. Just wait on calling off the engagement. He caught up and grabbed my shoulder. As soon as I turned around, tears started to fall. I don't want to call it off either, but after being treated like that, I cried hard on the street, my tears staining the asphalt like raindrops. It's unbearable. They act like you're valuable only because you're the heir to a prestigious steakhouse. There are so many good things about you, Kevin. That's why I wanted to marry you. Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Mary, Kevin said, soothing my shoulder. Thank you. I'll make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Kevin was always so kind. After parting ways with Kevin, I drove home. But I didn't want to return feeling sad. Maybe I'll buy myself something to cheer myself up. I went to the mall, bought some shiny cosmetics and sweets, and decided to have a nice Italian meal to make up for the missed lunch because of that unpleasant mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Returning home around 7 p.m., I noticed the house was noisy. There were shouts coming from the living room. What's going on? Mom? I went to the living room to find out what was happening. And then... Wow. You came at the right time. Just got here, didn't you? My mom exclaimed as she rushed to the living room door. I looked into the living room over her shoulder. Then, Kevin? And there was Kevin. But not just Kevin. Why am I brought here? I don't understand. A woman's voice screamed. But her outcry was soon drowned out by a louder voice. Apologize to her right now, a man demanded as he saw me, beginning a respectful and deep apology. Hurry up. You two as well. Then he turned and shouted at two women standing next to him. What's going on? As soon as Kevin told us about today, we were rushed here without any explanation. I don't understand at all. The two women hysterically cried. It was Emery and Kara, the two who had just made a mockery of me. That means the man who had just apologized was... Thomas, this makes no sense, one of them yelled. So it was Thomas, Kevin's father. You two really... Mr. Miller is our top customer. What? Emery and Kara were shocked. Our restaurant serves $400 steaks, remember? The National Retirees Association isn't for people like that, they exclaimed. But Thomas fired back. That's what you call being truly ignorant of the world. Judging people with such a narrow view is not your place. Emery gasped at his intensity. Hi. Emery makes a strange voice at the sword curtain. Listen, this man was a director at Big Ace Trading, a publicly listed company. Really? Emery and Kara's eyes widened. That publicly listed company? Emery asked in a strained voice. Of course. Thomas continued, trembling with anger. Our restaurant owes its success to customers like him. Introduced by Big Ace Trading. Huh? Kara and Emery both jump. Really? But the National Retirees Association... Before they could finish, my dad intervened. Yes, I work there now. So what? They bared their teeth again. Isn't that where poor people work till they die? We were deceived by Mary, they ranted. I only mentioned his current job because you asked, I retorted. Your narrow-mindedness is frightening. Judging and scoring people like that. My dad started to explain. I work for the National Association of Retired Persons. My father started talking. I've always worked at a company, even as a director at a publicly listed one. But after retiring, I wanted to meet different people and learn about their lives. I've met fortune tellers, piano teachers, people I never would have encountered in my corporate life. That's why I work at the National Retirees Association, to broaden my horizons. After his explanation, this must have been a good learning experience for you, Mary. He turned to me. It was. I never want to deal with such biased people again. It was a good experience. But whether I can forgive or not is another matter. I glared at the stunned Emery and Kara with contempt. When Dad heard that, well, that's true. I heard from Kevin that you assume that just because her father worked at the National Association of Retirees, my daughter was marrying him for his money. This is so disrespectful to the people who work there. Above all, it's unbearable to hear Mary insulted, called a marriage scammer. He laughed with a coldness I had never seen before. When I was little, even when I got into mischief, I never saw my dad make that face. He was a dad who never got angry. I realized for the first time that he laughs when he's angry. The way you all arbitrarily judged Mary, it's a bit different from that. Me, Master, and Kevin, we're talking about you two. I know where Kara works. We were discussing it over steaks made by Master. What? Kara seemed surprised that her workplace was being discussed, even though she had unreservedly inquired about my company. But the surprises didn't stop there. You work at Collins Accounting, right? Mr. Collins uses the National Retirees Association for his housekeeping, and that's how we met. Now, we even play golf together. What? Kara was continuously surprised, her mouth opening and closing. Well, I've been to Mr. Collins' steakhouse. I knew you came for steak. Kara's face went completely pale. I realized for the first time that when a person's face turns blue, it actually looks almost black. And after hearing the whole story from Kevin, I guess Master hurried over here, even before Mary got home. I came back leisurely from shopping for cosmetics, eating out to heal a broken heart. Please forgive us. For the first time, Kara apologized herself. Until then, she had an air of, why should I? Emery too. Please forgive Kara. She began a deep apology again. And to think you can be compassionate towards your own daughter, but treat someone else's daughter like that? My mom spoke for the first time since we arrived. We've raised Mary with such care. To think of her as a gold digger. Such a family we would rather not have, she yelled in a trembling voice. Then took a deep breath and exhaled. But I'd like to say that. Mom turned to us. Kevin is a good person. He called us even before coming here. I felt like crying at my mom's kindness. Despite having such a disrespectful family, she still distinguished Kevin. Thank you. Kevin expressed his gratitude. We will be happy, Kevin stated firmly, and Dad smiled warmly. A different smile from before. Then, please stop apologizing. We'll continue to visit Master's Steakhouse. I tasted Kevin's steak recently. He's skilled. It made me feel he was well raised. Dad reached out to shake Thomas's hand. Thomas shook it, then turned to Emery and Kara and said, "We need to make amends for the rudeness to Mary and send off Kevin properly. You two should let go of the pride of an established high-end steakhouse. It's unnecessary for you." Then said, "These two aren't worth making apologize anymore. I'll send them home." He led them away as they continued to beg for forgiveness. But their pleas fell on deaf ears. "Master, no." "Young master, what would you recommend?" Two customers entered the store. "Today's recommendation is sirloin." Kevin smiled brightly. I went to confirm their order. "Wow, beautiful and great steak?" When a beauty brings you steak, it tastes even better. One customer laughed. "Such a beauty? I don't think so." Blushing, I replied. Kevin and I eventually got married without issue. I quit my job to work at this steakhouse. Our customers are all nice people. Many praise Kevin's skills, calling him young master. Ultimately, Emery's divorce was inevitable. What she did to me was unforgivable. Kevin declared, "If it's Mary and Mom, I choose Mary." He chose Mary over his mother. Meanwhile, Kara resigned from her accounting firm after they learned of the situation and was cold-shouldered. Now, both of them have moved to another state, and we no longer see them. There, at the corner seat of the counter, eating steak with a smile, is my dad. Kevin's improved. The meat's delicious, and the cooking is exceptional. Dad enjoyed his steak. "Thanks. Eat a lot. Steak is Dad's favorite after all." I've eaten enough. And I have work at the National Retirees Association tomorrow, so I'll head home now. Tomorrow, Dad will go to work. Looking forward to new encounters. As I did the billing, I felt happy seeing Dad so content. A father and daughter, seeing each other's happiness and warming each other's hearts. I thought, there's nothing happier than this.
My sister-in-law is going to give a speech in French. She hasn't been brought up in the same kind of educated environment as us, so please be patient with her. Upon hearing this, the room buzzed with anticipation. All eyes turned to the groom, who was visibly flustered. I switched on the mic, hoping to put him at ease. "Congratulations on your marriage. Now, without further ado, let me proceed with my speech." The room fell silent as I began, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Emily's faint smile. Then I began my speech in fluent French. Every now and then I glanced over at the couple. Emily's frozen smile seemed somewhat out of place. "Why, how—" While working in the fields, I spotted fresh rabbit tracks in the cornfield next door for the first time this year. I paused my work to take in my surroundings and locked eyes with a rabbit and its baby. The mommy rabbit was feeding on grass with its tiny baby, a sight that was truly heartwarming. Oh, how cute. It's that time of year already, isn't it? My name is Sarah, and I'm currently 30 years old. Right now, I'm planting corn in a carefully prepared field. This farming work is monotonous and often makes me lose track of time. Before I knew it, it was already evening, So I decided to stretch a little on the spot and call it a day. As I was brushing the dirt off my clothes with my hand, it caught the eye of a familiar farmer who was also getting ready to head home. We exchanged friendly nods. The neighborhood farmers have always been kind, and they taught me patiently even when I was a 16-year-old who knew nothing about farming. I chose not to go to high school and have been living off a mix of farming and part-time jobs. This way of life started when my parents were killed in an accident when I was still in middle school, leaving behind me and my younger brother Jason. Jason and I were taken in by our maternal grandparents, who treated us with more kindness than anyone else, despite our childhood inability to fully understand what was going on. Thanks to them, we were able to quickly recover our smiles without falling into despair. However, our grandmother was frail and often sick. She acted strong in front of Jason and I, but our grandfather, who was supporting her while working, was brave but visibly worn out. Given that we had just moved in, our lives were certainly stretched to the limit. At that time, our grandmother was taking care of our house chores and us to the best of her ability, but her health was uncertain, and we didn't know if she would need to be hospitalized long term. I saw how she tried to act cheerful around us, but I would hear her cough at night and our grandfather leaving for work before we woke up. Seeing Jason's innocent face sleeping peacefully next to me, I made up my mind not to pursue high school, but instead to work. At first, I started delivering newspapers, but because I wanted Jason to go to high school, I took on another part-time job in farming. It was tough at first, but Jason was able to attend high school and focus on his studies. Later, he was accepted to Harvard University. The day I attended his college orientation as his guardian, I was filled with tears of relief seeing his growth. And Jason was able to secure a job at an international company. He often said, "I can't thank you enough, sis," but all I wished for was our family to be healthy and happy. And now, several years have passed since then. Our grandfather retired and decided to prioritize supporting our grandmother at home. Perhaps our grandmother's health stabilized, being comforted by the constant presence of our grandfather, and now she lives a peaceful life. Today after work, I was supposed to visit my grandparents' house. Jason, who often travels for work and moves around, rarely gets a chance to see our grandparents, so I make sure to visit them regularly. After cleaning off the dirt, I got in my car and headed to my grandparents' house. As I drove, it got progressively darker, and by the time I arrived, it was completely dark. I parked the car and opened the slightly old door. "I'm home." "Welcome back, Sarah. Hey, Sarah's here." Then I could hear quiet footsteps from the back. "Sarah, you look well. You haven't had dinner yet, right? It's ready. Why don't you join us?" "It's been a while, you two." "Sure, I'm hungry." When I said that, both of them welcomed me with a smile. I've been away from this house for many years now, but the comfort of my childhood home is something special. As I sat eating dinner with my grandparents, catching up and making small talk, the phone rang. "Who could it be at this hour? Should I get it?" "No, it's fine, Sarah. Just sit down and eat your dinner," said my grandmother as she answered the phone. "Hello? Oh, it's been a while, hasn't it? I'm fine. How about you?" "Oh, really? Congratulations. That's great. Oh, wait. Let me get Grandpa on the phone now." I knew immediately from my grandmother's tone that it was Jason on the other end of the line. The phone was passed to my grandfather, who also seemed to enjoy the conversation. "Sarah, you should also talk to him." "It's okay, I can talk to Jason anytime." "Oh, is that so? But—" "Oh, I'm doing well. I'll let you talk to her now. Here, Sarah, it's Jason." With a happy look on his face, my grandfather held out the phone to me, leaving me with no choice but to take it. "I'm okay, but—" "Hello? Sis, long time no see. How are you?" Surprised by Jason's voice, louder and more energetic than I'd expected, I gasped a bit. "Long time no see, Jason. I'm good. You startled me with your loud voice, but I'm glad you sound well." "What? Am I loud? No way. Grandpa and Grandma just have poor hearing." As Jason said that, I couldn't help but smile and let out a chuckle. "That's so like you, Jason. So, you occasionally call like this, huh?" "Nah, it's been a while since I last called. I had something to tell you." "Something to tell?" "Yeah, I've already told Grandpa and Grandma, but I'm headed overseas for work." "What? That's amazing. So they chose you, Jason?" Well, it's not that big of a deal, but it's all thanks to you, sis. Thank you. What do you mean? It's all because you've worked hard, Jason. So was this call to tell me you won't be able to return home for a while? There's one more thing, actually. I'm getting married at the same time, too. What? Really? Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I really wanted to introduce her to you sooner, but I've been too busy with work these past few years. That's why I had to tell you on the phone like this. That's all right. Being busy is a good thing. Thanks, sis. So my assignment is in Paris. I'll be living there for the foreseeable future. We're thinking of holding the wedding there, so come over with Grandpa and Grandma. I'll cover the travel expenses, of course. Paris? When I looked at my grandparents, they were beaming, perhaps happy for Jason. But I started to worry that taking the elderly couple on such a trip might be too much for them. Jason, I'd love to go, but taking these two... I know. It would be bad if something happened. I wanted them there for the special moment. Oh, then I'll come over before the wedding. When's your next day off, sis? Me? I have tomorrow off, but after that... Got it. Then I'll bring her over tomorrow. Let Grandpa and Grandma know. What? Wait, that's pretty short notice. Wait, did you have some plans, sis? Not really, but mental preparation? You don't need that. She's a really nice girl. I'm sure you'll like her. Oh, I gotta get back to work, so can you tell him? Bye. Wait, hold on. The call ended abruptly, and I reluctantly hung up. I see. Are Jason getting married? That's wonderful. That's right. He used to be so small. I'm so happy for him. Oh, Sarah, is the call over? What did Jason say? About that. He's bringing his fiancé over tomorrow. Tomorrow? I explained to my surprised grandparents that I was worried about taking the elderly couple to an overseas wedding, and I guessed Jason wanted to meet them before his overseas assignment. I see. At our age, it's hard on the heart to fly. Indeed, but if we can see Jason again after so long, let's make a feast tomorrow. Jason has always been smart, but he's always been restless, always thinking on the run, so to speak. Well, it's good that he's found someone who can support him. Let's celebrate tomorrow. Then I'll come over early tomorrow and help with the cooking. With that, I started eating the remaining dinner that had been left untouched. The next day, despite being a habitual late riser, especially on days off, I woke up early and headed to my grandparents' house. Despite it only being midday, my grandparents were already busy preparing for the visitors. Seeing their eagerness, I felt my nervousness melting away. As evening arrived, the sound of the sliding door opening echoed through the house. I'm home! Jason's vibrant voice was followed by a softer, reserved one. Hello there. As I went to greet them, I found my brother, whom I hadn't seen for a while, and a lovely lady standing there. Ah, sis, long time no see. Let me introduce you to the woman I'm going to marry. I'm Emily, nice to meet you. Oh, I'm Sarah, Jason's sister. It's so nice to meet you. Emily and I shook hands, welcoming the couple into the house. Emily greeted our grandparents as well. She laughed often, was very outgoing, and quickly became friendly with our grandparents. As we sat around the dinner table, Emily suddenly asked me a question. So, sister-in-law, you're a fan of lemon on your shrimp? Huh? Oh yes, I always have been. Really? Me too. This is the first time I've met someone else who likes it the same way. I'm so happy. Emily's cheerful conversation made her easy to talk to, and we chatted and laughed together. However, I couldn't help but notice Emily's gaze on me when I was talking with others or had to leave my seat for the restroom. I brushed it off, thinking it was perhaps poor eyesight, or maybe it's just the way she looked at people. Today wasn't the day to worry about it, as we were here to celebrate Jason's upcoming marriage. The conversation shifted to Jason's future overseas assignment. From there, I learned that Emily had lived in Paris during her junior high school years. That should make adjusting to life there and any culture shocks easier, right? I asked. Yes, indeed. The city might look a bit different now, but I think I can manage living in Paris. Plus, I'm really happy to have the wedding in my second hometown. All of this, including my overseas assignment and meeting Emily, I owe to you, sis. It's all because you encouraged me to go to school back then. I can't thank you enough. His gratitude made me humble, but Jason kept thanking me throughout the day. Stop, come on. Like I always tell you, it's all because you worked hard, Jason. But sis, I wouldn't be who I am today if you hadn't done everything for me. Oh, I remember now. I'd like to ask you to give a speech at the wedding. Me? Well, it is your important day. If you want me to, I'll do it. Really? That's great. Looking forward to it. Don't set the bar too high. Even at that moment, I felt Emily's gaze on me. However, the dinner went smoothly, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Time flew by, and before I knew it, it was the day of Jason's wedding. From the day I was asked, I had been rehearsing a carefully crafted speech for Jason's big day. As I headed to the venue, I mentally read through the speech, preparing to deliver my brother's once-in-a-lifetime speech. When we arrived at the ceremony venue, I decided to check on Jason first, heading towards the groom's waiting room. As I opened the door to the room, I was surprised to see Jason still in his everyday clothes. "Oh, big sis, thanks for coming. Was it hot outside?" "Yeah, I was taken aback by the heat, but I'm fine. More importantly, you haven't dressed up yet. I was looking forward to seeing you in a tuxedo." "You're too eager. We still have plenty of time." As we chat for a bit, I heard the door open. Turning around, I saw Emily, the bride, standing there. I tried to greet her, but she cut me off, a knowing look in her eyes. "You made it here all by yourself, sister-in-law. I heard you didn't go to high school, so I was worried about you." Her loud, inappropriate comment leaves me taken aback in the quiet waiting room. "Huh?" Jason steps in front of me, confronting Emily. "Hey, what the heck? Stop it." Emily, facing the furious Jason, whimpers. "I was just expressing my concern. Why are you blaming me?" I watch this unfold, and promptly step between Jason and Emily. "Don't get mad, Jason. I'm fine. Today is an important day, right?" "If you say so, sis." Jason relents, and the situation settles down. Emily, on the verge of tears over the smallest thing, strikes me as someone who always needs to be the center of attention. Throughout Jason's dating history, some of his girlfriends have been jealous of the bond between us siblings. With that experience, I kept my composure, watching Jason comfort Emily until she stopped crying. And so, planning to leave early and find my seat to rehearse my speech, I started to step away. But then Emily, who had been crying just moments before, flashed a smile at me. "Oh, and please do your speech in French so everyone can understand it, okay?" She giggled. I was left dumbfounded. "No, sis, you don't have to do that. Emily, don't say such things." Jason chimed in. At that, Emily's face crumpled as if she were about to cry again. "It's okay, Jason, I understand. I'll practice." I reassured her. Emily cracked a small, cunning smile, but I quickly left the scene. The wedding began, and seeing Jason getting showered with blessings, looking so content, made me genuinely happy. The wedding continued, and before I knew it, it was my turn to speak. Standing nervously before the mic, I was about to start my speech when a voice echoed from a different mic. "My sister-in-law is going to give a speech in French. She hasn't been brought up in the same kind of educated environment as us, so please be patient with her." Upon hearing this, the room buzzed with anticipation. All eyes turned to the groom, who was visibly flustered. I switched on the mic, hoping to put him at ease. "Congratulations on your marriage. Now, without further ado, let me proceed with my speech." The room fell silent as I began, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Emily's faint smile. Then I began my speech in fluent French. Every now and then I glanced over at the couple. Emily's frozen smile seemed somewhat out of place. "Why, how?" "I actually once worked part-time in agriculture, and we hosted a French man 5 years older than me, who was interning there. He was kind, always thoughtful, and I secretly had a crush on him. Looking back, it was my good youthful days. Wanting to deepen my friendship with him, despite the language barrier, I borrowed my friend's school French textbook and studied diligently. At first, our conversations were awkward, but at some point I became capable of casual conversation in French. As my jokes during the speech set the room roaring with laughter, I noticed Emily seemed completely lost. I figured she'd probably forgotten her French after so long abroad. On top of that, her 3 years of middle school abroad had taught her that unless you're keen on learning, you can get by with just gestures and vibes. Just as it's hard for a child to understand what adults talk about, it seemed unlikely Emily understood everything that was happening. As my speech drew to a close, I saw Jason, deeply moved, crying out loud. Beside him, Emily, clueless as to why Jason was crying. As I finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. Emily, who still had no clue what was happening, started clapping along. When I asked, "Was that okay?" in French, she fell silent, her face flushed with frustration. Seeing this, the crowd, guests included, clapped even more. As I was returning to my seat, I heard Emily's shrill voice. Excuse me, isn't it time for me to change into my next outfit? Why do I know the schedule better than you all? Can't you do your job? Hurry up! Perhaps she was irritated with me. Emily's tirade against the staff and her behavior towards everyone else remained terrible until the end, but somehow the wedding concluded without a hitch. Back home in Louisiana, I showed my grandparents the wedding photos and videos. They were thrilled, and even now, months later, they sometimes look back at them, shedding tears of joy. Meanwhile, Jason, who'd moved abroad, started calling more often than before, and the bond between us siblings grew stronger. According to him, many of the guests at the wedding had seen Emily's malicious behavior and arrogant attitude towards me and had grown to despise her. Emily's reputation that she'd built up over the years took a nosedive, and her friends began to drift away. Then Emily started blaming Jason for everything, crying, throwing tantrums, and worst of all, she started to verbally abuse Jason on a regular basis. Having lost all hope for Emily, Jason was now working on a divorce. A few months later, as usual, I went to see my grandparents, had dinner with them, and the three of us were chatting about recent happenings. Suddenly, the sound of the front door opening resonated, followed by a, "I'm home." I quickly ran to the door. "What, Jason? Why are you not in Paris?" "Oh, sis, you're here too. Perfect timing. And seriously, even if this place is in the middle of nowhere, you should keep the doors locked." "Oh, Jason, welcome back. Paris? Are you done over there?" "No, I'm still living in Paris, but I had a business trip to New Orleans, so I decided to swing by." "Oh, that smells good. I'm hungry." "Well, then come over here and eat, Jason. Guess what? Jason's back!" Seeing Jason for the first time in a while, my grandparents were happy, their voices naturally rising, and they surrounded the hungry Jason with flying conversations. Amidst all this, I was worried about this think of the run type of Jason. "Jason, it's totally fine that you suddenly came back, but are you okay with your own family matters?" Startled by my somewhat loud voice, Jason flinched, but immediately turned towards me, straightening his posture a bit. "Sis, about that. Actually, the divorce has been finalized, so I wanted to tell you that in person. I'm really sorry for causing you distress. You've always been there for me, and I didn't mean for this to hurt you. I'm sorry." "Well, if that's the case, you don't have to be so formal about it. It's all in the past now." "No, but I hurt you too, sis. I'm really sorry." After that, Jason insisted that he was fully responsible for making me feel bad. Then, with a voice on the brink of tears, Jason said that even my decision not to pursue higher education was initially his fault, and he kept apologizing over and over again. Seeing this, I gently put my hand on Jason's shoulder, speaking to him softly. "Jason, that incident wasn't your fault. Don't worry about it anymore. I'm not bothered by it anymore either," I assured him. I saw a look in his eyes that suggested he still had something to say, so I quickly added, "Going out into society earlier than others has taught me a lot. I've met wonderful people and I've experienced many happy moments. And now, being able to be here with my family, I consider myself very fortunate." Upon hearing this, Jason, with tears welling up in his eyes, muttered, "You're really the best, sis."
I snagged your rich husband.
The first call I received from my younger sister Lois, who hadn't replied to any of my messages, came just before our mother's funeral.
"I just got back from Hawaii with Keith. I brought you some chocolate souvenirs."
Enraged at her thoughtlessness, I lost control and yelled at her in front of the entire family. "You can have my husband, just get to the funeral already." Taken aback by my outburst and what I'd said, Lois could only respond with a bewildered "what?" from the other end of the line. After giving her the address of the funeral home, I angrily hung up. I knew she'd try calling back, so I turned off my phone, sat down in the seat designated for the family, and tried to gather myself. My name is Emily, and I just turned 38. I grew up in a family of 4, my parents and my sister, who's 6 years younger than me. My parents were strict, especially with me, the eldest, but they always spoiled Lois because of her charming looks. Whenever Lois wanted something, she would flash an irresistible smile and say, "Emily, I want this," and I would almost always give in. Regrettably, this habit persisted even after she grew up, and she became an extremely troublesome sister. My father passed away due to illness 8 years ago, and my mother received a terminal diagnosis about 6 months ago. She had been in and out of the hospital. I married Keith, a senior colleague from work, 2 years ago, and moved away from my family home to an apartment near my office. Over the past 6 months, I was driving an hour each way to take care of my ailing mother in between work. Lois had moved back home and quit her job a year ago after breaking up with her then boyfriend. Still, she insisted that I was better at caregiving and kept pushing the responsibility onto me. So I took a month off from work to care for our mother, but despite my best efforts, she passed away 2 days ago. And where was Lois? She had jetted off to Hawaii a week prior. I tried my best to convince her not to leave, but she wouldn't listen and went off anyway. At the funeral, after the priest finished speaking, friends and family began to pay their respects. It was a testament to my kind-hearted mother that not only relatives, but many of her friends also came to mourn. Several colleagues from my company also showed up. I'm sorry for your loss. Thanks. I'm just grateful that you allowed me to take time off to spend with my mother in her final moments. He's my father-in-law, the president of the company I work for. He's been extremely understanding about my situation and has helped me a great deal. But where is Keith? I haven't seen him here. Well, he's been overseas on a business trip since last week and I haven't been able to reach him. Oh, I see. I'll ask the sales manager about it. For the large company he runs, Keith and I are in different departments. Keith works in sales and he constantly complains. I'm always busy with business trips. I tried to understand that he was not here during this difficult time, but I was anxious about having to handle everything on my own, and without being able to contact him or my sister. Meanwhile, my father-in-law took time out of his busy schedule to attend the funeral, and his support almost brought me to tears. I felt so grateful for it. I had to hold back the tears that were almost overflowing. In the limo heading to the crematory with the rest of the family, I turned my phone back on, hoping that Keith might have tried to contact me. To my surprise, there were nearly 30 voicemails, most of them from Lois.
Answer your phone. You can't just make up some ridiculous lies because you're upset that I took Keith from you.
What I heard was her yelling voice. She took Keith from me? Have I heard something like that? When she called before the funeral, I was too preoccupied with the handling of the mourners to comprehend properly what she was saying. Lois and Keith are having an affair? No, that can't be true. I was startled and felt sudden agitation. Does that mean Keith was on a trip with her? Seriously? When I hastily checked the voicemail, there were several from my husband.
Emily, I'm so sorry, but you're a strong woman. You can survive on your own, but Lois, I need to support her, so let's break up.
Hearing his message that sounded almost like a line from a soap opera, I heard myself mutter, I wish I hadn't heard it. Why did I have to find out that my husband and sister were having an affair and having a great time in Hawaii during my mother's funeral? You need to come right away if you want to say your final goodbye to Mom. We're already heading to the crematory. I reluctantly called my sister and told her so.
That is not funny. Stop lying. You're just bitter because I took Keith from you.
But it's the truth.
You must be upset about losing your husband. Yeah, he's the next company president and rich. I understand how you feel, Emily.
So?
But there are good lies and bad lies, you know. You're an adult. You should know better.
I never thought I'd hear that from you. I was surprised, though I didn't know that you and Keith had been cheating.
I bet.
Lois sounded really happy. Ever since we were kids, she would play tricks on me and laugh out loud when I fell for them. I sighed in frustration. Anyway, it's not the time for this. If you want to say your final goodbye to Mom, come now.
I'm tired of that lie.
Then why do you have Keith ask his father? On the other end of the phone, the two of them sounded like they were having a discussion. They probably didn't expect me to bring up his father. My husband, who was apparently right next to Lois, took the phone.
Emily, is that true?
If you don't believe it, do whatever you want. I'm hanging up now. After a while, we arrived at the crematory. This is my last moment to say goodbye to Mom, and my mind is a mess. With the rush of these past few days and the grief of losing my mother, I no longer knew what to do, and I found myself with tears streaming down my cheeks. Seeing me like this, one of my relatives patted my back saying, Your mom would surely be grateful to you, Emily. You took good care of her until the end. I stood in front of my mother's casket and said my final goodbye. Mom, thank you for everything. I'm gonna miss you so much. It was right at the moment when her casket was carried out for the cremation. Wait a minute, where's Mom? With a loud voice, my sister and husband rushed in. When Lois saw the casket disappearing behind the doors, she tried to cling to it, but the doors are closed mercilessly in front of her. No, I haven't said goodbye to Mom yet. Stop it! Lois was wailing, and Keith was standing behind her, stunned. We should move as it's disturbing to others. Why didn't you tell me, Emily? I couldn't see Mom at the end. It's your fault. My fault. Absolutely. If it was this bad, you should have told me earlier. You never said anything. I can't count how many times I've explained our mother's health condition to Lois. Every single time she'd just brush it off saying, I don't know how to handle any of this. I'll leave it to you, Emily. That's right. This all happened because you didn't explain how serious your mother's condition was. It's your fault. Even my husband, Keith, started blaming me. I stared at them in fury. Then what were you two doing all this time? I raised my voice. Gasping, they finally fell silent. If you can't say it, I will. You were on a fun-filled, romantic getaway in Hawaii together, weren't you? The relatives started to murmur as they had been observing this in disbelief. Up until now, whenever relatives asked, "What's wrong with Lois?" or "Isn't Keith coming?" I've been making excuses for them so that they wouldn't look like the bad guys. Mom, I'm sorry. I really wanted to say goodbye to you more quietly. Apologizing in my mind, I knew I had to clear up things here and steeled myself. When exactly did this affair start? You knew I was on leave, caring for Mom, right? I was having a hard time. I asked for help numerous times, but all you two did was spend fun time together, didn't you? Enough, it's all your fault, Emily. It's because you didn't keep Keith close enough. What's that supposed to mean? You need to prioritize your husband more. He said he was bored at home because all you talk about is work and caregiving. Poor Keith. Oh, so that's what he said. As I glared at Keith, he quickly looked away, avoiding my gaze. Emily, you managed to marry a rich future company president, but you got conceited. That's why he got snatched away by me. You always do this, Emily. In reality, every time I had a boyfriend in high school or university, Lois stole them from me. The only time it didn't happen was with Keith because Lois was already living with her boyfriend at the time. What a shame. From now on, I'll be with Keith and become the future president's wife, so break up with him. Fine, you can have Keith. I'll divorce him. By then, I didn't care about anything. When I decided to marry Keith, I had no idea he was the son of the president. He was working at a regional branch and came to work at the headquarters in my department. Keith was bright, friendly, and good at connecting with everyone, quickly becoming a part of the team. I started to have feelings for him as he approached me. We started dating, and when he proposed eventually, I happily accepted. It wasn't until I visited his parents' house that I found out his father was the president of the company I worked for. It was a real surprise. So promise me, don't come back later begging you don't want a divorce. I won't do that. You're sure you want to leave me? Yes, I am. If you leave me, no man will marry a workaholic like you. You know that, right? I can live my life as I like on my own, but for today, please say your final goodbye to Mom properly. Keith and Lois exchanged looks, smirking as if they'd won. The relatives furrowed their brows watching the situation. I'm really sorry for showing such an unpleasant scene. As I was apologizing to my relatives, I heard Lois whisper to me, "Always playing the good girl. I hate this about you." I've put up with a lot because she was my little sister, but I'll stop considering her as such. I'm getting divorced from Keith, and I have no family left. All I need to do is prepare myself for that. I bit my lower lip hard. 2 weeks have passed since then. I moved all my stuff out of the apartment I had been living in and started living in a new condominium that I had leased near the office. I even put my parents' house up for sale, and there's nothing left. Lois began living with Keith as I moved out. Of course, Keith and I have already completed our divorce papers and submitted them to the courthouse. I'm sure they're happily starting their newlywed life right now. Well then, I've finished handling Mom's paperwork. Now the revenge begins. Watch over me, Mom. I smiled at my mother's portrait, picturing the events to come. Enjoy your newlywed life while you can, you two. The next day, while I was at the office for my job reinstatement, a lot of voicemail messages piled up on my cell phone.
Hey, what's going on? We're divorced, aren't we? Why do I have to pay $30,000?
Anticipating that they might come to my new place if I leave them alone, I decided to meet at a local diner. As soon as we started talking, Keith was frothing at the mouth and yelling, "I received a document from a lawyer? What's this all about? We're already divorced, aren't we?" Exactly, I don't understand. I had asked a lawyer to claim $40,000 from Keith as my share of the property and $30,000 from Lois for her part of the medical care coverage for our mother. The documents must have arrived at their place. It's something that they should have expected, but they probably didn't. I was exasperated. You just need to pay what you owe. That's not fair. Listen, don't think you can get away with what you've done. I've suffered from tremendous emotional distress. Should I sue you for that as well? Emotional distress? You cheated. That's a fact. So pay up. They fell silent for a moment, probably realizing they couldn't argue with the law. Then, after a while, Lois started looking down at me. So, Emily, you're just after the money after all. Fine, I'll let Keith pay. If I borrow money from my dad, we can easily prepare the $70,000. Keith, I know you don't have any savings. Lois, are you really okay being with a guy who doesn't have any money? Keith will become the president soon, then he'll be rich. It's just a bit of patience. Oh, Lois, you're after the money too, aren't you? No, I have plenty of love. Dad has been saying for a long time that he'll retire when he turns 65. So in 2 years, I'll be the president. Really? It'd be great if you could really become the president. I'm definitely going to become one. I'm the only son. I wonder. Finally, I couldn't hold back any longer and burst out laughing. I can't believe this. Has she finally lost it? I heard my sister saying. But the real stage of the revenge that I had set up is just starting. Keith, you've been missing work for quite a long time, saying it's because of the family funeral, right? Well, my mother-in-law is family too. That's true. But the company knows what you've been actually doing. Huh? You don't know that your father was kind enough to attend Mom's funeral, do you? I had purposely not informed Keith and Lois about this, so Keith believed that his father knew nothing about what was going on. I've let the company and the president, your father, know that you lied about taking family leave for caregiving and went off to Hawaii with your mistress instead. Oh, that was... You never did any caregiving at all. You have the gall to act so brazenly, and you've been off work with Lois on several of your business trips, haven't you? I've reported that too. How did you find out? Lois has been posting photos on social media showing where and when she went out. Plus, there were a few pictures with you in them. How shocking. Huh? You knew about my social media? It's the same account you had back when you were in high school. Of course I'd know. Lois looks uncomfortable, and Keith is taken aback by my words. Hey, is it true that Dad knows everything? Just as my mother was family to you, your father considered her his family. And of course he would know about the family funeral, as it should be reported to the company. Even after the funeral, he cared about me and had contacted me several times. So I had reported all the past events to him. He is quite furious. Also, he said he has absolutely no intention of making you the next president. Huh? But I'm his son! He said he doesn't remember ever saying that our company follows the principle of hereditary succession. Also, he told me to convey that he doesn't need a son who would do such disloyal acts. Huh? So Keith isn't going to be the president? As I silently smiled at them, their faces turned pale. I decided to press them even more. And just to let you know, I'm becoming the president starting next month. Huh? Actually, I had just received the official notice from the president and my superiors at the company. I have officially been appointed as the new president. There is no way they'd let you become the president. If you think it's a lie, why don't you call your father right now and ask? Keith is frantically calling his father. Lois, his new wife, is watching anxiously. So, Emily is becoming the president. It was true. So, I can't become the president's wife? If I knew that, I wouldn't have stolen you from Emily. But you just told me you love me. That was including your money. What did you say? I couldn't stand the couple starting their squabble in front of me, and I got up. If you want to fight, do it somewhere else. Oh, I'll be expecting the payment. Thanks. Wait, please don't abandon me. Please support me, sis. I apologize. I deftly sidestepped the hands that the two of them stretched out in desperation and left the place. After that, the two of them ended up getting a divorce. My ex-husband Keith was demoted by his father and eventually quit his job. Now he's working part-time jobs every day to pay what he owes me. Lois is said to be working in a bar at night. Apparently she was doing well at first, but she was fooled by a bad man and ended up in a terrible situation. I've become the president. That being said, it's for a small company that's like a tenant in the main company building. a subsidiary in the caregiving industry that was established based on the proposal I submitted during my caregiving leave. Still, the caregiving business is expected to expand in the future, and I'm expected to do well. I'll do my best from now on.
My name is Maggie. I'd been solely focused on my work without any romantic entanglements until the age of 28. Or rather, I realized that I'd become 28 years old without even noticing due to the overwhelming busyness. Some of my junior colleagues started getting married as early as 24 or 25, and deep down, I felt a sense of urgency. I wonder if I'm going to spend the rest of my life at this company. Sure, there are senior colleagues who are older and far more experienced than me, and I can't help but admire them for their impressive professional skills. But it's also true that there's a part of me that strongly believes that I don't want to remain single forever. That's when I met George. George is kind and always prioritizes the places I want to go and the things I want to do during our dates. Having never experienced such kindness from a man before, I was swept off my feet and gladly accepted his proposal. Everyone had a good time at our wedding, huh? Yeah, I managed to get married while I was still in my 20s. What? You were worrying about that? George smiled with his usual calm expression. Come on, I was quite worried. I see. It's tough for women. Men can get married in their 40s and nobody says anything. Indeed, it seems like only women are worried about age. Speaking of women, my father-in-law has a calm personality like George, but my mother-in-law is unexpectedly assertive and strong-willed. We don't have plans to live with them, and we'd probably only go visit them for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I could tell she wasn't particularly fond of me. I plan to continue working and maintain a dual-income household, even after getting married, but it appears she has reservations about that. My income is slightly higher than George's. He candidly mentioned it to his mother, who then started pushing her old-fashioned values onto me, saying things like, "A woman should focus on the household and support her husband. And men have pride. It's not good for you to work so aggressively." But in this uncertain time when layoffs and cost-cutting measures can happen, I feel the need to save up at least until we have children. George agrees with me on this, but in front of his assertive mother, he's usually overwhelmed. I should probably avoid unnecessary interactions with my mother-in-law, I thought to myself. So, which travel agency are we going with? George's voice caught me off guard. A wedding is a major event in life, but there's another important event that remains: our honeymoon. I can't decide. When it comes to a trip to Europe, different agencies offer various plans. I want to go to this place, but I'm also interested in this agency's French wine tasting tour. I pointed to various spots on a brochure marked with Post-its. I've always had a longing for Europe. Stained glass windows in churches, stylish cafes, and historic towns. An opportunity like this is probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So many choices. You can decide whichever one you want. George, as usual, muttered in a relaxed tone. Okay, I need to make a serious decision. We've been saving up for our future and our children, but we're planning to splurge a bit on this trip. Our honeymoon is probably the only time we can take off from work for so long. Can I sleep on it and decide tomorrow? Sure. It's not often we can go on an overseas trip. George, wearing a smile, made his way to the kitchen to enjoy a cup of coffee. Opportunities to go abroad or on vacations are rare, but above all, a honeymoon is an event that happens only once in a lifetime. I want to create unforgettable memories with George, just the two of us. That's why I didn't want to make a decision I might regret later. Even during work, I found myself constantly daydreaming about our trip whenever I had a spare moment. I did refrain from opening travel magazines except during my breaks, of course. Still haven't decided? Yeah, I was so engrossed that I didn't notice my colleague's presence until she spoke up. Hey, you better hurry up and eat before lunch break ends. Oh, right. Ugh, it's already this late. Don't most European tours usually have predetermined routes? You know, visiting famous tourist spots in Italy and Rome. That's completely wrong, and Rome is in Italy. My colleague laughed and gave me a teasing look. Must be tough being a happy girl in love. Requesting time off is a whole process, and so I need to choose a travel agency soon. You're quite the contemplative lady, aren't you? I didn't pay much attention to my colleagues' teasing at the time. I was too caught up in planning this milestone in my life. Make sure you do your job responsibly, too, will you? I'm giving you the time off, after all, my boss said, as if seeing right through me. I'm sorry. I wondered if he noticed that I'd been distracted lately. I need to pull myself together. I opened a file on my computer and started working. I need to focus on my job. I've decided to go with this travel agency's tour. Sure, it's great to hear you found a tour that you like. I must have spent over a month, maybe close to 2 months trying to decide. I wonder if there are really people who agonize over a trip for such a long time. I must have caused a lot of trouble for the travel agency. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've been making, a bunch of inquiries, even about the tour details. The female staff at the travel agency gave me a warm smile. You two are going on your honeymoon, right? Yes. It's normal to take your time thinking about your honeymoon. It's a once-in-a-lifetime journey. We've even had a client who spent 6 months planning their trip alongside their wedding. I was genuinely surprised at the mention of 6 months. Is that so? Despite my murmuring, she maintained her smile. An overseas trip is different from a domestic one. There's a sense of something special. Our job is to provide a trip that will be a wonderful memory for our clients. I felt relieved to hear those words. I was immensely grateful to our wedding planner for their assistance during the wedding, and as I realized that various people were supporting us like this, my anxieties about our trip naturally started to fade away. Now I can focus on work without worry. I'm sure my boss will be relieved as well. When George came home in the evening, I gave him the news. I'm home. I've decided on our travel plan. We're going with this travel agency. George replied in a relaxed manner to my childlike excitement. That's good. I'm glad you found a good one. I was a bit taken aback, but after all, I was the one who had always longed for a trip to Europe. Perhaps this is what travel means to George. Hey, are you excited about our honeymoon? Feeling insecure, I found myself asking him. Surprised, he opened his eyes wide and replied, Of course, with you, I'm certain our trip will be great. We should inform our parents later, too. We spent the evening discussing our trip in detail. Sorry for the worry. We've finally decided on our honeymoon destination. I was so happy that I could hear it in my voice, even without realizing it. My boss, sensing my excitement, said with a relieved expression, Oh, good. I'm counting on you until the trip then. He also handed me some extra paperwork. I didn't even mind the extra work. I was that excited. With both of us working, the timing for us to take the 12 days off needed for a trip to Europe was limited. Because of that, we managed to set the schedule quickly. Guess what, Mom? I couldn't contain my happiness and immediately called my mother when I got home to tell her about the trip. That sounds wonderful. I'm looking forward to the authentic European souvenirs. Something authentic, huh? Maybe I'll look for something stylish, accessories or something. My mother seemed ready to happily send me off on my trip. All I had to do was pack. I've always loved packing for trips. I should also check the weather of the places we're going. Why does preparation for something fun proceed so smoothly? Unlike me, who's impatient, George, with his relaxed personality, seems to take his time with his travel preparations. A week before our trip, both of us had finished packing. Hey, can we buy a new suitcase? I was taken aback by George's sudden question. Suitcase? What's wrong with the one we have? Wait, are we going to repack everything? In response to my rapid-fire questions, George murmured, "Well, not quite. I was thinking of preparing an additional new suitcase." It's true that the suitcase we have is of medium size and there's not much space left once we pack 2 people's changes of clothes and other necessary items, including a folding umbrella for the trip. We should have enough space to fit souvenirs for our parents and work colleagues, but if I come across a lovely antique or something, I might end up wanting to buy it. That might be a good idea. We could use one more. When we have to carry them, you and I can each hold one. Yeah, thank you. I was genuinely happy that George showed interest, as he rarely voiced his opinions during our wedding planning or previous trips. And then it was the day before our honeymoon. I felt my heart race with excitement as I realized that tomorrow was finally the day of departure. What if I can't sleep tonight? But it would be a shame to feel sleepy during the trip. While I was preoccupied with such thoughts, I heard the doorknob turn. I'm home. Hey, I'm worried I won't be able to sleep tonight because I'm so excited. George, with a solemn look on his face, started to speak. What could he want to talk about the day before our trip? There should be no issues with our passports or documents. What's up? He began speaking. About my parents, Then a shocking phrase slipped out of his mouth. I was planning to ask you to take care of my parents' plane tickets, but I forgot. Do you think it's still possible to make an arrangement? For a moment, I was unable to comprehend what George was saying. Wait, what are you talking about? When I asked, he explained, I told my parents about the trip after everything on the itinerary was finalized, but they got upset saying that it's normal for the groom's parents to tag along. By any chance, have you already purchased their tickets? I felt my blood start to boil at the sudden and unexpected conversation. What are you talking about? A honeymoon is supposed to be for the couple, isn't it? It's absurd for parents to come along. But my parents were overjoyed when I told them it was a trip to Europe. But just because they're happy, we had just gotten married and this was supposed to be a special trip for us. Does George think of it as a regular family trip? Then suddenly the doorbell rang. Without making eye contact, I glanced at the intercom screen and saw George's parents. Contrary to my shock, George casually responded through the intercom. I'll open it now. And quickly let them into the living room. Sorry to barge in like this. In my mother-in-law's hand was a bag stuffed full of luggage. Mother-in-law? Taking advantage of my stunned silence, my mother-in-law kept talking. A Boston bag might not be suitable for a flight. We heard you guys prepared a suitcase for us. The suitcase was for them? I felt a sense of weakness wash over me. As I looked at George, he had an expression as if this was all to be expected. I don't want to argue with my in-laws, but I couldn't back down on this matter either. After all, we had spent so much time planning this honeymoon. Plus, there's no way we could get additional tickets at this point, and I verified online that the tour bookings are already completely booked. This is our honeymoon, you know. But my mother-in-law answered in a very matter-of-fact manner. So what? George wasn't taken aback either. My father-in-law was standing behind my mother-in-law holding a huge amount of luggage. A honeymoon is usually just for the couple. In response to this, my mother-in-law replied, Didn't you come to marry into this family? It's only natural that a wife serve her husband's family, isn't it? I understand if it's a family trip, I would gladly go on the trip with the two of you, but a honeymoon is different. Honeymoons and family trips are the same thing. Then how was it when you went on your honeymoon? I was gradually getting irritated, but my mother-in-law, with a triumphant look on her face, responded, At that time, my mother-in-law had a bad leg. It's a daughter-in-law's duty not to push her too hard, isn't it? So you didn't take your mother-in-law on your honeymoon, did you? My mother-in-law was clearly displeased. I knew this would happen the moment I decided to stand my ground. What a difficult girl. We packed with excitement for our trip to Europe, you know. Excitement for our trip to Europe. Just hearing those words made all the struggles and joys I had experienced rush through me, and I couldn't help but feel tears welling up. Hey, Maggie, isn't it okay if they come? I heard George's voice coming from beside me. The more the merrier. If tomorrow doesn't work out, we can cancel and look for a place for the four of us. Huh? As I looked back in astonishment, my mother-in-law joined in with a mix of laughter. That's right. Oh, I have an idea. How about changing it to a trip to Paris? I want to brag about it to my friends. Her words even made me feel dizzy. I'm holding back because I have my own pride, but to be honest, I feel like bursting into tears right now. Before I knew it, as if weighed down by my mother-in-law's pressure, I found myself sitting on the floor. Then, from above my head came a totally unexpected sentence. It was from George. I had no idea you hated my parents so much. Huh? Looking up, I saw him looking down at me with a stunned face. My mother-in-law also chimed in. That's right. It's terrible. I couldn't stand their voices anymore, and I finally screamed hysterically. Why am I being treated like the bad one? It's our honeymoon, for heaven's sake. Why are you ruining such an important trip? George showed no sympathy for my outcry. Of course, he didn't seem to care either. You've been acting strangely lately. Huh? Every time you open your mouth, it's all about our honeymoon. You're not being rational. George said this coldly. Mom, Dad, sorry. Could you go home today? You can leave your stuff here. While saying this, he took his parents to the front door. At the front door, my mother-in-law was making a fuss, but I couldn't hear what she was saying. When he came back after a while, he spoke. Let's cancel our trip for now. Take a moment to think rationally. I no longer had the energy to respond to those words. At the same time, I noticed that my feelings for my husband were quickly cooling down. He cared more about his parents than about me. I couldn't imagine continuing as a family with him, facing the challenges of life together, knowing that my mother-in-law will always intervene and yet my husband won't stand up for me. I don't see any happiness in sight. I finally managed to call the travel agency just before closing time. I couldn't possibly enjoy going abroad in this state. The staff who helped me when I made up my mind answered the phone, asking several times if I really wanted to cancel. I clearly communicated my intent to cancel. She seemed to sense various things from the sound of my downcast voice. She briefly explained the necessary points, such as the cancellation fees. I no longer had any feelings of disappointment. It was purely procedural matter. Then, several days passed. During the next few days, there was no conversation between George and me. Our last conversation ended with George saying, We'll resume the conversation when you've had a chance to reconsider. But I don't think I did anything wrong. Neither of us apologized or tried to continue the conversation. It was just before dinner when my husband suddenly put a divorce document on the table. I'm taking my whole family on this trip. If you don't like it, we're getting a divorce. George said it with a frustrated attitude. Strangely enough, I accepted this as George's answer without much hesitation. I responded right away. Understood. We'll get divorced. What? The one who was surprised was George. Are you serious, divorcing over just a trip? You're the one who brought the divorce papers. I occasionally glanced up at George's face as I carefully filled out the divorce papers, making sure there were no mistakes. People might think it's just over a honeymoon, but this man doesn't cherish what's important to me. He won't protect me when it matters. Could I spend my life with such a man? He should go on the trip with his parents if he wants to. I don't need a bleak future. George, unable to back down now, also filled out the form with shaking hands. I'll bring this to the family court tomorrow. I said this as I took the divorce papers from George's hands. A tiny voice saying, "Oh," slipped from George. He may actually be regretting this. But I've made up my mind. This is how our divorce was finalized. Of course, my parents were surprised when I told them about the divorce. My mom suggested that I reconsider, but when I told her about the honeymoon and my former in-laws, she seemed dumbfounded and said cheerfully, "It's a good thing you cut ties with that weird family." I do regret that I caused trouble for my parents and our wedding guests. My colleague, who used to tease me as the troubled maiden, seemed a bit uncomfortable for a while, but when I said it was the right choice to break up with a grown man who's still dependent on his mother, she seemed to get back to her usual self. On the other hand, it seems that George vented about me being heartless to his colleagues at work. He intended to highlight my lack of common sense, but instead his own absurdity was exposed and quickly spread within his company. He seemed to receive a lot of criticism from his female colleagues in particular, and apparently became known as a mama's boy. He himself was shocked by the gap between societal norms and his family's way of thinking, which led him to make a series of significant mistakes at work. George, who was previously regarded as a laid-back employee, has now transformed into an incompetent and irrational employee. According to a mutual friend, it seems he is going to be transferred to a small branch office in Nebraska. But the situation there is quite severe, and it's obvious that he, who was sheltered and raised by his mother, will eventually quit. By the way, since he suggested the cancellation of our trip, of course I had him pay the cancellation fee in full. I've dealt with a lot, but I'm still a bit hurt. When I let out a sigh without thinking, I made eye contact with a senior colleague passing by. I was taken aback, but she looked at me and said, "Solo trips aren't so bad, you know?" She is very competent at her job, but she always seemed a bit distant, and we didn't have much of a private relationship. I was a bit surprised when she suddenly started talking to me. "A single life isn't bad either." "Huh? I'm actually divorced." She flashed a charming smile as she spoke. There was no trace of tragedy in her smile. Rather, it looked refreshing. "Really? I had no idea. You see me as someone fully dedicated to work, right? In the past, I was desperately trying to become the perfect wife. I kept pushing myself beyond my limits, constantly restraining myself. I didn't know she had such a past. Until now, I thought I was only interested in work, and she always seemed perfect in my eyes. I was pushing myself too hard. At that time, a bunch of my colleagues got married and quit their jobs all at once, and I guess I was in a rush to get married too. I felt the same way, I found myself saying naturally. When I save up some money, I go on solo trips. You know, being alone can be quite nice. Is that so? Why don't you try it once you've saved up some money? Of course, I wouldn't mind accompanying you. I couldn't help but smile at her words, and before I knew it, we were both laughing. I realized I might have been shackled by society's expectations of happiness. I want to become a free spirit like her, not bound by anything. What is my happiness? Is it working? Or maybe having hobbies? Maybe I might find a true life partner, someone who isn't my ex-husband. In any case, I have plenty of time to think.
Ugh, you all need to shut up. Always nagging at me? Yeah, I get it. I'm the bad guy here. Happy now?
Laughing flippantly, the person speaking to me was embarrassingly my husband. If I had known he was such a lowlife from the beginning, I never would have married him. But now, it's too late. As I was thinking this, an unexpected voice yelled at my stupid husband. What? My name is Emily, a 28-year-old office worker. I live with my husband Liam and we don't have any children yet. I also have my precious little chihuahua, Lulu, who I have had since I was single. She's a clever little troublemaker, always scratching at drawers to drag things out.
Oh, by the way, I'm having dinner with Ethan next Saturday night.
My husband mentioned this over dinner.
With your brother. You two are really close, aren't you?
Ethan is my brother. My husband and brother have been friends since elementary school and quickly became close because of their shared interests like soccer. Sometimes I even get jealous of how close they are.
Ethan told me the other day, has Emily's cooking ever made you sick?
Ugh, my brother is still as rude as ever. I was a bit annoyed by that comment. If you have an older sibling, you may relate, but I think there are two types. One is the type that dotes on the younger sibling. One of my friends has a younger sister and loves her even more than her parents do, she claims. The other type is a bully, always demanding what's yours. My brother falls into this category.
Huh? Not eating the strawberry? Well, I'll take it then.
The person who would casually swipe the strawberry off my cake that I was saving for last was my brother. Even now, it makes me mad. My brother and I have never really gotten along, but I do owe him one big thank you.
One of my friends wants your number. Some people have weird tastes, huh?
He said this with a sigh, handing over the contact info. That friend turned out to be Liam, my now husband. So my brother was like a cupid for our love. When we decided to get married, my drunken brother said to Liam,
You sure about this? You can still back out. She's like a gorilla at home, you know?
To which my husband replied,
You're the only one who thinks that. I've been interested in Emily for a long time.
That's what my husband told me. His words were met with a gross, oh, from my brother. What an awful brother. My husband Liam was a star of the soccer team and was quite popular in our generation. Thinking back, my brother was just as popular, but I never understood why. At home, he was arrogant, selfish, and gorilla-like. Wait, am I saying the same thing as my brother? Even after marriage, Liam was as kind as ever, and I was very happy. I didn't realize that this happiness was slowly beginning to crumble. One day, my husband came home visibly frustrated.
Oh, today was the worst.
Welcome back. Oh, what happened? It was rare for Liam to get this angry. Apparently, as he was about to get in the car to come home, he noticed a scratch on it. He said it wasn't there this morning, but he honestly wasn't sure when it happened.
I should have installed a dash cam.
My husband's car didn't have a dash cam. I had one in my car, but my husband has been driving his current car for nearly 10 years because he likes it. I had suggested getting a dash cam, but he said,
I have never been in an accident or anything, so I think I'm good for now.
He kept putting it off, saying things like that, but this time he seemed quite upset.
Emily, I'm sorry, but can you go to the car shop tomorrow and get a dash cam installed? I don't really understand machines.
Since I had the next day off from work and had no particular plans, I gladly agreed. The next day, my husband went to work in my car. I had driven my husband's car a few times, but as someone who usually drives a compact car, his larger car felt a little scary to me. That night, when I told my husband that the installation was successfully completed, he was in high spirits, saying,
Now I can feel safe no matter what happens.
Seeing his response, I thought to myself, that's right, I can feel safe no matter what happens too, and smiled a little. Soon after, my husband would fall into hell. Around this time, I noticed that my brother had been contacting me more often. It wasn't anything serious, just casual conversations like,
How have you been? Or are you getting along with Liam?
Mostly, we shared trivial updates about our lives. I found my brother's behavior a little strange, but I thought maybe he's finally starting to find his little sister cute? Bro, it's great that you're friends with Liam, but you're going out drinking too much lately. When I said that, my brother went silent for a moment, then said,
Sorry. Naomi and I have been fighting a lot, and I have things I want to talk about.
He laughed over the phone. Naomi is my brother's wife and my sister-in-law. My brother and Naomi were high school classmates and have been dating since then. I don't think of my brother this way, but he and the beautiful Naomi were known as the most attractive couple in school. I was also close to Naomi, as she was my senior in the same club, and we had been friends since our student days. Then, one day, something happened. I still remember vividly. It was a day of heavy rain from the morning, and my husband was in a bad mood as he watched the weather forecast.
Oh, rain all day. I hate going to the company for negotiations today. The road is narrow.
His company doesn't have company cars. They reimburse for gas, but employees must use their personal cars for outside work. Recently, the company's performance has been improving. and the president has finally started considering buying a few company cars next year. He happily told me the other day, so I said to him, "Why don't you use my car today?" I realized after I said it that my car is pink and maybe it's too cute for my husband to drive. He seemed to think the same thing, hesitated for a moment, but then said,
Is that okay? Last time I drove Emily's car. It handled well. I'll take you up on that.
and he went to work as usual. Well, time for me to go to work too. With that thought, I left the house as usual. The rain was getting stronger, almost like a typhoon. My usual commute route looked like a different road in the heavy rain, even with the wipers on full blast, and today I was commuting in my husband's unfamiliar car. I shouldn't have switched cars, I thought. That's when it happened. Ah! With a loud thud, the car I was driving crashed into a utility pole. At first, I didn't understand what had happened, but when I slowly opened my eyes, I saw a passenger car right next to mine. That's right, that car suddenly jumped out from the side, and I swerved to avoid it and hit the pole. Then I lost consciousness. I thought I heard the sounds of police and ambulance sirens in the distance. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. "Hey, Ethan, Emily's awake!" A familiar voice. It was my sister-in-law, Naomi. Naomi, why are you here? Where am I? Ouch! I felt a little pain, perhaps from hitting my head. My hands and feet moved properly. If I hadn't turned the steering wheel at the last moment during the accident, I might not be alive now. The thought sent chills down my spine.
Hey, Emily, stay still. Lie down quickly. I'm here with you.
My brother, with tears in his eyes for some reason, was sitting next to Naomi. Seeing my brother like that, Naomi chuckled. "Ethan, you're overreacting. Calm down." Looking at the two of them, I asked, more importantly, why are you two here? Where's Liam? At my question, the smiles on their faces vanished instantly.
The hospital tried to contact Liam first from your address book, but he didn't answer because he was at work, so they called me next.
My brother explained. I had written emergency contacts in my address book. First was, of course, my husband Liam. Second, after considering my parents, I chose my brother who lives nearby. Third were my parents. It seemed the hospital had contacted them from my belongings after I was rushed in. Then, the two of them looked at each other with awkward faces. "It's okay, big brother. I have a pretty good idea of what's going on," I told them. The day I drove my husband's car to get the dashcam installed, I felt something off the moment I got in. A strong perfume scent, familiar and unpleasant. That's right, our dog Lulu barked more than usual at my husband the other day, and I smelt the scent then. My woman's intuition kicked in, and I opened the dashboard. Recent movie ticket stubs and a single earring I hadn't recognized fallen under the passenger seat. It seemed my bad feeling had come true. At my words, the two looked surprised but said, "Calm down, okay?" My brother showed me something. I knew it. Afterwards, the doctor came into the room and examined me. There were no abnormalities in my brain or body. The pain in my head was from a scratch on my forehead, which would heal naturally in a few days without leaving a scar. I was relieved as I didn't want a scar.
It's near a miracle that you came out of that accident with only this. You're really lucky,
the doctor said. My brother and his wife were relieved at the test results, telling me to call them if I needed anything. After saying that, he and his wife went home. A while later, my husband Liam rushed into the hospital room looking frantic.
Emily, you had an accident? Are you okay?
I explained to my husband what had happened and that I needed to stay in the hospital for a few days. Then my husband said,
Oh, it's not a big deal then. I had so many missed calls from the hospital, I thought I didn't need to rush here.
He sighed and said that to me. I stared at my husband with cold eyes and told him that I was thinking of going back to my parents' house to rest for a while after being discharged from the hospital. The moment I mentioned it, my husband's voice noticeably perked up.
Oh, that's great. You don't have to worry about me. Take it easy at your parents' place. I'll even come to pick you up. No problem.
His face was clearly delighted. Looking at him, I thought from the bottom of my heart that he was an idiot. As if I would worry about you. I had suspected it, but my husband was indeed having an affair. The fact that he could be so callous to his wife who might have lost her life showed that he was quite infatuated with his lover. His insistence on picking me up from my parents' house was a clear sign that he didn't want me to come home unexpectedly. Enjoy it while you can, you better be prepared. A few days later, my husband came to pick me up when I was discharged. We stopped by our house to pack and then headed straight to my parents' home. Usually, I would sit in the front passenger seat when going out with my husband, but this time I deliberately sat in the back.
Make sure you call me when you want me to pick you up.
Absolutely. I almost laughed at my all-too-obvious husband but managed to hold it in. Yeah, I understand. Sorry that you'll have to use my car for a while. I didn't feel bad at all, but I spoke apologetically. My husband replied,
No problem at all. I like this car.
He cheerfully said he would take good care of my car and went home in a good mood. I like that car, but I will never drive it again. About a week after returning to my parents' house, I went back to our home. I'm home! I shouted loud enough to be heard in any room. Sure enough, I heard a commotion from the back room. A few minutes later, my husband came rushing out.
Hey, I told you to call, didn't I? Why did you come back all of a sudden?
He seemed quite flustered, almost angry. Oh, I forgot. Maybe it's because I hit my head in the accident. Sorry. But more importantly, I have something to talk to the person hiding in the back room. Can you bring her out? And hey, your clothes are inside out, I said with a bright smile. My husband's face turned pale in an instant. And then he finally realized that behind me were my parents, my brother and his wife, and even his own parents who had come all the way.
What? Why?
His father, a strict man, yelled, "Bring her out now." A few minutes later, after letting everyone into the living room, my husband and his lover awkwardly entered from the back room. No wonder they were uncomfortable. It was 2 against 7. My husband was overwhelmingly at a disadvantage. The two of them looked down and didn't say a word. Everyone, including me, was irritated. It's been a while, hasn't it? Maria, right? At my words, the two of them flinched. I knew this woman. She was a year younger than me in high school and was the soccer team's manager. My brother and I were a year apart, and my husband and Maria only overlapped for 1 year. She used to pick fights with me while waiting for Liam, my husband, after practice, even after he graduated and went to college. Emily, you're so tall and stylish. I'm really jealous. I'm so small, but Liam said he likes small girls, so it's surprising. She was the type to pick up fight with a smile on her face. That continued even after Liam graduated and went to college. When I contacted Liam the other day, he replied right away, and I was so happy. Please thank him for me, Emily. Or, you know, they say that relationships between college students and high school students don't last long. Aren't you worried? Were some of the things she said. Back then, I had an inexplicable confidence that my husband was head over heels in love with me, so I didn't pay any attention to her. That must have been frustrating for Maria. I was worried about work, and suddenly Maria started sobbing. Her silly way of speaking hadn't changed at all, and it irritated me greatly. I almost lunged at her, but a glance at my sister-in-law Naomi, who was sitting next to me, told me she felt the same way. She was forcefully holding down her right hand with her left. The two of them explained that Maria worked at the reception desk of one of my husband's company's clients. They had reconnected over old stories and started meeting alone after work. But they insisted that there was nothing suspicious about their relationship.
It was just advice, nothing more.
My husband kept repeating this like a mantra. Is he crazy? Has he been cursed? Oh, Maria, I saw the tag on your skirt when you came into the room earlier. Isn't it inside out? Immediately, both of them checked her skirt, but of course I was lying. They made a face as if they had been caught, but it was too late. However, my husband's shirt really was inside out. What kind of advice requires you to take off your skirt in someone else's bedroom? Are you stupid? I said that to the two fools. Whether they didn't like my attitude or were too flustered to understand, my husband snapped.
Where's the evidence? It's unfair to accuse us without any evidence.
He actually had the nerve to get angry? My parents, in-laws, and I were so angry that our faces turned bright red. It was clear that everyone was furious.
Hey, you've been noisy since earlier,
my brother said, and then he played a video on the TV. It was a footage from the dashcam on the day of the accident. The loud thud made it clear that the impact was quite strong. The other driver, perhaps in shock, initially refused to admit fault. At the hospital, I apparently raged that I wasn't at fault. The police showed the footage to my brother who was nearby, and it clearly showed the other car speeding into me and running a red light just before the collision. This evidence led to the conclusion that it was almost entirely the other driver's fault. However, the footage before the accident clearly showed my husband and Maria happily driving together.
I don't want to go home yet.
Maria said, "You're really cute." My husband replied, stroking Maria's head at a red light. Then he said,
You're so helpless.
and drove into a hotel parking lot. On another day, Maria said, "Work ended early. I wanted to see you. Is your wife okay with this?" My husband replied,
I told her I'm going out with Ethan, so it's totally fine.
and kissed Maria. Ugh! My mother-in-law started crying. Even though I had seen it once before, I felt nauseous.
I didn't know the inside of the car was being recorded. That's cheating.
My brother looked at my husband with cold eyes and said,
You know, Naomi has always been telling me that Liam is definitely cheating, but I always believed there was no way.
With a cold look, my brother stared at my husband. Naomi seemed to have stumbled upon an account on social media that looked like Maria's. There were no faces shown, but there were plenty of suggestive photos like a profile of my husband, the watch he wore, and the interior of his car. I immediately consulted my brother, but at first, he didn't believe it. I heard that this caused a lot of fights between my brother and his wife. Still, it seemed he had some doubts, and he told me that he had been contacting me regularly. The decisive factor was the dashcam footage from the day of the accident.
You know how I felt when I saw that footage?
My brother asked. My husband, after a brief silence, snapped back.
All of you are so annoying, always nagging. Okay, I was wrong. Happy now? Ha.
Oh, why didn't I notice what kind of a person he was? I wish I could go back to my youth. As I was lost in thought, an unexpected person yelled at my husband who was laughing in front of me. It was not my brother, sister-in-law, or in-laws, but my daddy, who had been silently listening to the conversation.
Hey, you! Who do you think you are? What's with that attitude? What are you doing to my daughter?
My brother and I unconsciously trembled at the sight of Daddy like this. My parents are gentle people, especially Daddy, who once said,
Look, Emily, this flower is trying hard to live too.
When I was young, I stepped on a flower, and he said this so quietly and kindly. He was kind, even to plants. There was only one time when Daddy, who was like a Buddha, lost his temper with my brother and me. I think it was when my brother and I didn't listen to Mom at all, and then a door in the corner of my memory seemed to open. My brother and I, who usually don't get along, vowed deeply at that moment never to make Daddy angry again. My husband, who had been so bold until now completely subdued by the sight of Daddy, who was completely different than usual. Standing like a guardian deity, Daddy was next to my mother, who was looking at my husband as if he were filth. Afterwards, my in-laws bowed deeply to our family and took my foolish husband home. By the way, Maria, the other woman, was sent home on foot. As they were leaving, my brother told my husband,
I will never forgive you for hurting my precious sister.
He said it quietly. By the way, my husband used my brother as an excuse for his secret meetings with his lover, thinking that my brother and I were on bad terms and wouldn't pry too much. I want to slap you with this right hand right now, but it would hurt my hand. You're not even worth that pain, said my sister-in-law Naomi. Naomi and I were former volleyball players. Unlike me, who was always a reserve, Naomi was the ace attacker. Just thinking about her slapping someone sends shivers down my spine. My ex-husband should consider himself lucky to have escaped with his life. After some time, our divorce was finalized. Thanks to my in-laws, my ex-husband reluctantly paid the compensation in the divorce settlement, spending all his money.
I'll buy a new car with the insurance money from the accident.
My ex-husband was all excited about this, but the insurance money for his old car wasn't enough to buy a new one. After paying me the compensation, he was left with just enough to buy a used compact car.
Oh man, driving a compact car is shameful.
My ex-husband, who had this prejudice, was happily driving my car even though his own car was totaled in the accident. The reason? Maria, his mistress, had said, "This car is so cute," and his happy face was clearly captured on my dashcam. Speaking of Maria, she seems to have borrowed money from her parents to pay me the compensation in the divorce settlement. Now, under her strict parents' watch, she's working nonstop to pay off the debt. Her relationship with my ex-husband continued for a while, but he became neurotic due to Maria's emotional ups and downs, quit his job suddenly, and now his whereabouts are unknown. Despite this situation, Maria's social media had a single line, "Finally, he's mine. I'll chase him forever." Yes, it seems like it was written only one word. It's like something out of a horror story. My ex-husband got involved with a terrible woman, but that's his problem now. It does not matter to me. As for me, I sold my tainted car and used the money as a down payment for a new one. I rented a place near my office and am living happily with my beloved dog Lulu. Come to think of it, Lulu never warmed up to my ex-husband. Maybe it was her animal instinct? I have been visiting my parents more often, and recently we celebrated their wedding anniversary with my brother and his wife. As I was serving a strawberry whole cake, I asked my brother, who was sitting next to me, "Brother, do you want a strawberry?" He replied,
Yes, please.
like a child. I looked at my brother eating the strawberry with a smile. It seems that from now on, my brother and I will get along well.
Why the hell are you thinking of ditching your daughter's wedding celebration?
The angry yell of a young woman can be heard over the phone. I did indeed receive the wedding invitation 3 months ago, but I thought I properly sent back not attending. Yet the woman is fuming, claiming that because I bailed at the last minute, the ceremony was ruined and I should take responsibility. Confused, I repeatedly explained that I had told my absence. However, the woman's response was something I did not anticipate at all. My name is Alicia. I have a childhood friend named Mike who lived next door, and our families have been close since we were kids. Mike, 2 years older than me, moved away for college and after graduating got a job at a big company in New York. I went to a local college and got a job at a small local company. Soon after, Mike got married to a college classmate, and I attended the wedding as a friend of Mike's. 3 years into their marriage, they had a daughter. Their daughter's name is Bella. They sent me pictures and videos, and Bella was very cute. Mike has good features, so I thought Bella took after him. Their noses were very similar, and Mike seemed to adore Bella to the point of spoiling her. His wife seemed to be a kind person, and Mike seemed to be living a happy life. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but 2 years after Bella's birth, Mike surprisingly divorced his wife and came back home with Bella. The reason for the divorce was his wife's infidelity. Apparently, she had been having an affair with her ex-boyfriend for about a year, and Mike could not forgive her. He obtained custody of Bella and returned home. Alicia, it's been a while. I still can't believe my wife was cheating. I went to see Mike after he returned home, but he had lost weight due to the shock of the divorce and was extremely depressed. He couldn't get over it, calling his ex-wife a lowlife for cheating and expressing resentment towards her. Even though he was doing his best as a father, Bella, still only 2 years old, was missing her mother and crying a lot. Worried about Mike and Bella, my family visited them regularly, provided emotional support to Mike, and helped take care of Bella. Over time, Mike gradually regained his spirits. Around the time Bella started kindergarten, she started calling me Mom. Because I saw Bella frequently and often looked after her, she became very attached to me. People around me said Bella needed a mother, and since I hadn't had a boyfriend in a long time, I decided to marry Mike for Bella's sake. I didn't have romantic feelings for Mike, but our parents were good friends, and with strong persuasion from those around me, I felt more swept up into the marriage. Still, once I decided to get married, I made a strong vow to take care of Mike and Bella with all of my heart. We rented a condo a little away from our parents' homes and started our new life as a family of 3. I had been working hard as a full-time employee at a local company, but I quit my job to dedicate myself to childcare, as Mike wished, and became a stay-at-home mom. With support from both families, Bella grew up healthy and vigorous. We had our share of difficulties, but the 3 of us were living happily. However, when Bella was in 5th grade, Mike had to resign from the major company he had been working for. He was forced to take the blame for a problem caused by his boss at the company. Even though he pleaded innocent, his boss's influence was powerful, and it seemed that nobody wanted to help him for fear of getting involved. After quitting his job, Mike, who was an excellent worker, was able to find a new job at a small local business in his hometown right away. But his salary was drastically reduced. When the family's finances tightened and we couldn't afford the rent for our current apartment anymore, we decided to move to a cheaper, older, and smaller one. I begged to return to my previous company and started working desperately to earn Bella's tuition. Our parents offered to help, but they were both living on their pensions and barely scraping by every month. Their house is small and there's no room for us to live together, so we can only accept their good intentions. I tried my best to manage our family budget frugally so that the three of us could live healthily. But Bella, who knew our previous carefree life, could not accept the gap between that and our current reality and began to take it out on me. "If only Mom could earn more money," she said. And unbelievably, Mike sided with Bella. I couldn't hold back my anger because if Mike hadn't been fired in the first place, we wouldn't have to live such a hard life, and it led to a big fight. Perhaps because of such a marital life, Mike had an affair. Bella was now in her sophomore year of high school, just old enough to choose which parent to live with, but still needing a guardian. Comparing to his previous job at a large company, Mike's salary had been extremely reduced, but it was still higher than mine. Thinking about Bella's future, I thought it would be best to leave it to Mike. When I consulted with her, Bella herself, returning from school, said she would go with her father. "I live with Dad and my new mom. My new mom is unlike you. She is a rich lady. Plus, she started her own company and is popular as the beautiful CEO everyone's talking about. Being with you is just poverty-stricken and you're a stranger without a blood tie, right? It's okay to live miserably alone in the shabby apartment forever, isn't it?" Bella was already calling Mike's mistress Mom. I was speechless at Bella's unbelievable insults and calling me you. Just then, Mike came home with his mistress. True to the name of the beautiful CEO everyone's talking about, the mistress, who introduced herself as Kathy, was a very beautiful woman. Kathy threw a wad of bills in front of me without even a greeting, a smug smile on her face. "Here's the compensation for the affair. It's $80,000 in total for me and Mike. If you want it, I'll be generous and give it to you, so pick it up." In my anger, I wanted to throw it back at her, but I took a deep breath and picked up the bills. Then Mike and Bella pointed at me and laughed rudely, saying I was vulgar and poor. Kathy, with a triumphant look on her face, said, "So we've settled. All you need to do is write a divorce paper right away and never show up in front of us again. We've even paid the compensation, so don't bother us with a lawsuit later." With that, the three of them left, laughing at me. I clenched the wad of bills tightly. I wanted to retort, and I felt like slapping all three of them in the face. However, considering it as alimony for two people, $80,000 was higher than the going rate. I realized that I wouldn't be able to win that amount even if I took it to court, so I decided to use the money to start my life anew. And so, 8 years later, I had forgotten about Mike and Bella completely while living a busy life. One day, out of the blue, my parents told me that an invitation to a wedding had arrived at their home. Apparently, it was addressed to me from Bella. When I looked at the actual invitation, the part that said unable to attend had been crossed out and attending was already circled. My parents said that it had been that way from the beginning, and feeling a bit creeped out, I rewrote unable to attend and mailed it back. I could have ignored it, but I thought it would be a hassle for the venue if the number of guests wasn't settled. 3 months later, during work, a colleague told me that a woman claiming to be my daughter was on the line for me. Could it be Bella? When I picked up the phone, Bella on the other end was so furious that she started yelling at me as soon as I took her off hold.
"How could you ditch my wedding, Mom?"
I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear due to her loud, angry voice. Even then, Bella continued to yell.
"My wedding is ruined because of you."
"Listen, I don't have a daughter. Can you stop calling me?"
"Huh? What are you talking about, Mom? We're family, right?"
Forgetting all about what happened 8 years ago, Bella laughed in a high-pitched voice. When I responded with a deep sigh, she started asking for money.
"Hey, Mom, your company is doing pretty well right now, isn't it? So you must be making a good salary. I'm struggling financially because my husband is asking for alimony. You'll help me out, right? Because your daughter is in trouble?"
Like I said, I don't have a daughter. If you're having trouble with money, you should talk to your rich and beautiful mom. When I responded like that, Bella started going on and on about how hard her life is now. It all started with a magazine. Kathy, who married Mike, apparently regularly purchases a famous trade magazine in her industry to see how her company is perceived by the public. Then she's noticed that a company had overtaken hers, which until then had been the talk of the town. It was the company I worked for. After my divorce from Mike, I worked tirelessly to forget about my married life. When the CEO said, "You know what social media is? Give it a try," I became the PR person, started being proactive on social media and gaining media exposure. Our company, which had been conducting business honestly in our local area, saw a boost in recognition and sales began to rise. We started to actively hire locals and even started to attract excellent talent from other companies. As a result, sales went up, which attracted more people, and we started to create better products, and we found ourselves in a very good situation. This seemed to be a huge blow to Kathy, and she seemed desperate to surpass our company. However, it wasn't a clever strategy to boost their own sales, but rather by bad-mouthing me to their clients, saying, "A company that hires such a woman can't be good," as a means to pull us down. The staff were shocked that the competent CEO suddenly became emotional and started to meddle in the management with personal feelings. It seemed that many people who voiced their opinions were either demoted or fired. As a result, talented people started to leave Kathy's company, and it was also suspected and avoided by other companies. Before we knew it, a big gap had opened up between her company and ours. Unable to acknowledge this, Kathy began to lash out at Mike and Bella, and it seemed that Bella and the others did not see any value in Kathy, who was not wealthy. At home, it seemed that they were living a life where angry voices were constantly resounding. Unable to bear such days, Mike and Bella would find people who work at the same company as me and say, "I want to start over with Alicia, but Kathy is getting in the way," apparently crying. But most of the employees of the company are locals, and among the new hires there are also people who got fired from Kathy's company. Naturally, everyone knew about my relationship with Mike, so they were not treated by anyone as a shameless parent and child. Despite this, the two of them who wanted to get close to me again by any means thought if they invited me to Bella's wedding, I would not be able to decline, so they sent an invitation. Even if I returned it as an absence, they would treat me as present and advertise me widely to the guests. However, on the day of the wedding, I was absent. Moreover, because Bella disliked Kathy sitting in my mother's seat, they ended up having a big fight in the wedding venue, despite it being a place for celebration. Eventually, the disgusted guests left and Bella was served with divorce papers from the groom, who saw her true nature.
"Mom, come back home soon. Your company is money, right? I'll kick that woman out next time. Let's live together as three again."
I'm in trouble if I'm blamed for not going as planned, involving people arbitrarily. Every time Bella calls me mom, I, who get a headache, repeatedly say, "We're not parent and child anymore, so stop contacting me," and I hang up. But since they keep calling over and over again, I consulted my boss and registered not only Bella's but also Mike's phone number as a nuisance call to the company. Perhaps they didn't have the leeway to call from a different number. I was able to have peace during working hours. When my work was over and I was on my way home, Bella, Mike, and Kathy were all waiting together. Bella, as always, accusing me of being heartless, Mike repeating his demands to get back together. Kathy was shouting at me to pay her money because I was breaking the promise of settlement by getting involved with Mike and the others. "Hey Bella, if you're struggling with money, wouldn't it be solved if your dad found a new rich mom? And Mike, you're the one who left with the other woman, so if you ask for a reconciliation with your ex-wife, me, it looks like you're a man who was also dumped by your current wife. Is that okay with you?" Both Mike and Bella, who had been so nosy, quietly closed their mouths. Finally, I looked at Kathy and smiled. "I've kept my promise to you. I haven't contacted these folks on my own. It's not me who's bad here. Isn't it these two trying to ditch you and sneakily getting in touch with me?" I quickly turned and headed back to the office. Behind me, the sound of 3 people hurling insults at each other echoed. With those people in my peripheral vision, I reported to the police that a squabbling family was on the brink of physical altercation. On the way home via a different route, I also contacted my parents' house to inform them that the actions of the 3 were becoming more intense. It just so happened, Mike's parents were also at home and responded with a reassuring, "If they show their faces, we'll give them a good beating." I asked them, "Please don't hit them, just keep the doors locked and avoid meeting them," before ending the call. When I went to work the next day, many people asked if I was okay. Apparently, after I left, the 3 really got into a brawl and many police officers had to rush over in their patrol cars. Even with the arrival of the police, the trio remained agitated and didn't care about the attention they were garnering. Eventually, they were each put in a patrol car and reasoned with, but given it was rush hour, many people ended up witnessing the scene. Among them were Kathy's company employees and partners, resulted in several deals being called off. Kathy, a headstrong businesswoman who was so engrossed in her resentment towards me that she neglected her business, ended up bankrupt. Being a wealthy heiress, she seemed to have sought her parents' help but was apparently told to take her responsibility for her actions and left to fend for herself. While Kathy was sorting out her business, Mike quickly took Bella and got divorced. After the divorce, Mike and his family returned to their in-laws where, true to their word, Mike's parents gave them a piece of their mind and severed ties, telling them never to show their faces again. Since the people around our parents' home knew us well, they felt uncomfortable and quickly moved to a different town. He was dismissed after a string of unauthorized absences, having run off without even submitting a resignation notice. Bella seems to be working at her job, but is struggling to repay the wedding costs that were demanded by the groom she had left high and dry. All three of them came to my workplace, but my understanding bosses and colleagues protected me, and my subordinates quickly reported them. The persistent trio eventually gave up when a hefty male security guard was placed at the company's reception, finally bringing the situation under control. Since then, I've been living my life devoted to my work so as not to remember those three. Thanks to the competent personnel from Kathy's company coming for job interviews, our boss is over the moon. I'm making a conscious effort to live each day without letting money get to my head and changing my attitude or abusing others.